we have this sensation that it all could come crashing down any moment.
I just had faith that it would be worth it.
Those years are important. We have our kids with us.
I just knew I wasn't going to regret it.
I knew it'd be worth it.
Good day, everyone. This is Dr. David Phelps of the Freedom Founders Mastermind Community and Dentist Freedom Blueprint Podcast. Today, really an interview that I've been looking forward to for several weeks. Dr. Drew Ballard reached out to myself and Alex on our team at Freedom Founders and said, hey, been listening to the podcast for quite some time. Love the hacks, love the energy. And I just like to share a little something about my story. Well, when I read the notes that Dr. Ballard sent, it was like a no-brainer. This is the spirit in which I believe we should all be living our lives, but Dr. Drew Ballard actually did it. So let me give you a little background on Drew, and then we'll dig into his story. Dr. Ballard is a 2007 graduate of the University of the Pacific School of Dentistry in San Francisco, California. After graduation, Dr. Ballard was admitted to an oral and maxillofacial residency. In residency, Dr. Ballard was part of the team of doctors and dentists charged with facial reconstruction of wounded soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. During this time, Dr. Ballard recognized the strong psychological aspects of facial aesthetics and the power of restorative and cosmetic dentistry, and ultimately left the residency to pursue cosmetic dentistry. He maintained a private practice for 7 years in Portland, Oregon. In 2017, Dr. Ballard made the decision to sell everything, take the kids out of school and world school with his family for almost 2 years, return to the United States, and now enjoys his time as owner of Downtown Phoenix Dental, a private restorative orthodontic and implant practice in Phoenix, Arizona. Dr. Ballard has lectured on the use of biocomposite resins, both nationally and internationally. Dr. Ballard also holds a special interest in non-invasive cosmetic procedures, applying emerging technologies to change and improve the way that dentistry is practiced and perceived. Drew Ballard, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you, David. How are you?
Doing so well. All right, so I got to get this straight. You're 38 years old. You're 7 years into private practice in Portland. You've got how many kids? 5?
Yeah, we got 5 kids, believe it or not.
So,
yeah.
So all right. So you're a busy guy. You're a go-getter, obviously, no question about that. But you decided to sell. You sold the practice, sold your home, and took your kids out of school and said to your wife, or you and your wife made these plans together, obviously. But you said, "Let's go do this," and you both agreed and essentially toured the world for the next couple of years with your kids.
Yeah, I just knew I wasn't going to regret it. I just knew no matter what it cost and even if it meant that I had to work till I was 80 years old, which it won't, I just knew that was what I wanted to do. I grew up with a great, mom and dad, but I didn't have opportunities like that. And I just knew that I could be successful in my practice, but I couldn't fail at home. No matter what I did, I could not fail with my family. And I just felt like this was a way to lock it in. If we could just spend a bunch of time together and do these great things, it would be memories that would last a lifetime.
When you decided to do this in 2017, 2018, just a few years ago, what was the age range of your children?
Yeah, so I wanted to get this done before my oldest kids were starting high school. I really wanted to give them some stability during that time. So my oldest at the time when we left was 13, and my youngest was just 8 years old. So we have 2 adopted kids, and so we have 5 kids within 5 years of each other. So they're kind of almost the same age, Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Give us a little bit of the adventure, and then I want to talk about some of the other questions that I've got for you. But the adventure, where did you go? How long did you stay? And what kind of things did you and your family do?
Well, this is awesome, Dave. So I love talking about this because it was not because I'm trying to give a travel log, but I just think it was one of the greatest things that a family could do together. But we had made the decision that we would try to world school the kids, meaning that we would take them to different places in the world and teach them things that we wish we had known or things that we didn't think they'd get in school. So we began in Cuba, and we went to Cuba to learn about economic systems and things like that in communism.
Yeah.
And then we went all the way around. We went to Costa Rica and we did biology, and we went to central Mexico, and we learned about ancient America and Mayan civilization. And we went to, the great cities of Europe, and we looked at all the museums and the concentration camps in Germany and discussed World War II. And we did all of this stuff that was, it's highly educational, super fun for us. And kids got to just, when you put yourself in a extreme situation, oftentimes just extreme things happen that end up being great life lessons just because you were there and you were doing something that's out of your ordinary routine. So a lot of lessons that came that weren't really even deliberate, that just sort of came about because of the positions that we were in. So we ended up actually getting tired of homeschooling the kids. So we decided to immigrate to New Zealand where we could get visas and put the kids actually in school. And we thought this would be another great experience for them to be in school in a foreign country. So we ended up immigrating to New Zealand, and kids started school there too, but we played hooky a lot there, believe me. And I had a lot of fun. So that was kind of the story, but we took them all around the world and just did our best to educate them on all the things that we wish we'd been able to learn.
So was your wife, who was the one that instigated this? Was it you or your wife? Or was it something you've been talking about together?
Both. So my wife and I have always sort of been like this, but I think it was just both. I mean, maybe my wife even, I don't remember exactly who instigated it. I can tell you when we were first married, so we honeymooned in Mozambique.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We were always doing this adventure travel stuff from the time that we were kids. And we got married pretty young. I was 20, 21 years old, I think 22 maybe. So when we first got married though, we sat down and wrote down a bunch of goals that we would have as a couple. And this was one of them. We said the way we worded it, and I know you hate the word retirement, David, but the way we worded it was we said, we are going to work 10, retire 2, work 10, retire 2. And that's kind of what we did. I mean, it wasn't exactly 10, but we did it, and we just pulled the trigger on every one of those goals that we made early on.
How did you've got 5 kids within 5 years of each other, 8 to 13 at that time. All of our kids are blessed to be individuals with their own personalities. Was there any stress on any one of them? Were any of them reluctant about this, or were they all just super excited?
Yeah, I think there was some reluctance. I mean, nobody said, "Hey, I don't want to go." I think they were. I'm not really sure why, but I think they just maybe a little bit leaving their friends and stuff like that, maybe. But what we did is we kept our house. So that was really important to us. We said, we're coming back to this home, guys. I don't want to come back from this giant world tour after you've been nomadic for 2 years and just throw you into another big crazy school system or something. So we deliberately kept our house so that there would be a safe place for them to come home. They knew that there was a place called home and that we'd get back there someday. So I think that was helpful.
Yeah, very, very, very important, no doubt. No doubt. All right. So give me a little bit of some of the lessons or the bonding that happened, because that was one of your big goals, is to actually spend time as a family, really bond for these 2 years, traveling together the world and learning together. And as you said, always gonna be unexpected things that happen, but that's how you learn. Talk to us a little bit about these last you've been back how long then? A year and a half?
Yeah, we've been about a year. We got back in January 2020. So
okay.
right at the end of 2019. So probably the most important experience that we had while we were out is the last 100 days in New Zealand. New Zealand is absolutely beautiful. It's a stunning country. The outdoors are just amazing. They were going into the third sort of, I guess, trimester of school. We didn't feel like they were getting a whole lot about it. So actually we took them out of school again. And this time I said, we're not going to even homeschool. We're just going to go enjoy. And I took them into the New Zealand backcountry for 100 days.
Wow.
And we slept in little huts called bush huts that are small, like cabin-like structures. Sometimes they have a wood burning stove, sometimes not. They usually have plywood bunks. We loaded each kid with 3 outfits, a down jacket, a rain jacket, some wool underwear, and some mud boots. Each one had exactly the gear that they needed. And we spent 100 days in the wilderness. We hiked over 500 miles during that time. So, anywhere from 10 to 20 miles a day, these young kids were hiking. And by the end, they were toughened up. I'd just tell them, hey, listen, the cabin's 20 miles that way. Get your boots on. We'll see it dark. and there will be, mom and dad will be there. We'll have some food. We go out, we come out of the bush once a week and grab a pizza and a shower and then get some groceries and go back in the bush. So that experience, David, was absolutely incredible. I learned a lot about my kids. I learned that we are way too easy on these kids. They can handle a lot more than we think they can handle. They are not fragile. They are not weak. I was babying them at first, and pretty soon I learned that, man, they can do this kind of stuff. I also had some of my kids, with 5 kids, some kids are going to be different. I have some kids that struggle a little bit just with, I don't know, self-esteem. We would put audiobooks in, and during the day we charge our batteries, on these little portable chargers on our audiobooks and on our cell phones and stuff like that. And these kids would listen to books as they're walking through the most beautiful scenic wilderness you could ever imagine. I saw my kids really blossom. There was fighting between the kids. There was wonderful helping, and just I couldn't believe what a difference it was to be in this wilderness environment for so long. That was just one of the most healing bonding experiences that we could have had together as a family. We needed it. It was been a hard, previous years have been just hard work, dental school and military and deployments and all this other stuff that I've done in my life that were hard on the family. This was a healing time for us. And my wife and I are closer than ever. The kids are closer than ever because of this experience.
So now that we've made all of our listeners jealous and envious of you and your life, let's talk about what you said at kind of the beginning, the cost.
Yeah.
Obviously the reward, there's no question the reward is huge, and no one would ever question that. But you mentioned, cost. I think a big part of who we all are as head of household, as parents of our families, we want to make sure our families are secure. We make sure there's enough money to provide everything we think they need, education and great roof over their head and great life experiences. And I think you're right. I think we do too much of that. But talk about the cost. You sold the practice. That was the capital you used to obviously travel. I guess you rented your home out. I assume while you were gone, you just rented it out. Yeah, you rented it out. So you could, with the capital from the sale of the practice, I get it. You could travel for a couple of years, come back. But what was the plan? You came back to the home in Portland. But let's talk about the cost. How did you and your wife rationalize this cost of 2 years of no income and actually depleting a capital base that you had built up with equity in the practice?
I don't mind telling you this at all about how much it cost. It was about $140,000 to do this, which is a lot of money, but it wasn't that bad for what we did. We found that we spent less money while we were traveling than we did just running a big household. When it came down to whatever lessons and insurance and just everything you pay. Let me tell you what I did. I want to make something really clear to the listeners. I am not a financial genius. I don't have a super above average practice. I'm not running like 5 associates where I've got all this extra income coming in. None of that applied. Here's what I did. I made myself some goals where I thought I could do this responsibly. I said, I can't have any silly debt, meaning any student loan debt, any car debt, any kind of debt like that would just be irresponsible of me to go out and travel and have a great time while I'm owing somebody else money. So I made sure I was clear of that. I also had a number in my mind. I told myself that I needed, and I was investing in the stock market. You know what I mean? I said, I need $500,000 invested in the market for my retirement, whether that's 401k money or Roth IRA money, whatever. I needed that amount in the bank. I needed to be, a certain place on my payment on my house, where I felt like I could handle all that. So I made myself a few financial goals where I thought I could do this responsibly. And then I didn't do anything on like a credit card. I was traveling. I was like, well, I'm not going to debt to travel. That's not responsible either. So I just tried to make it, I set myself some goals. They were my goals, and that was what I needed to do to make it responsible. I also, the sale of the practice was good, and I had saved money. Oh, the other thing is I said I needed $100,000 in liquid cash when I came home. That was more of my wife's deal. She just didn't feel secure she didn't want to come home, not have a job and be out of money. Well, I don't know why. That seems pretty reasonable, but no, she wanted some money in the bank when we came home. So we did it. It cost $140,000. I just had faith that it would be worth it. I mean, I was told from a very young age at church that no success in life would compensate for failure at the home. And I don't know what failure in the home meant, but I knew I didn't want to do it. And so I just said, I got to go do it. And if it means I've got to work a little bit harder when I get back, that'll be fine. And I want to tell you something. I came back to a bloody, pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and it's been fine. It's been great. Bought a new practice here in Mesa, Arizona. I know it's confusing because I was in Portland, but there's some backstory there. But we decided to come to Arizona. I bought a practice here. It's going okay. It's going great, actually, relatively, speaking. And you can do this, man. Don't be afraid to do what you want to do, especially because life's going by, man. I'm 41, but I've got long ways to go, I hope. But I'm really happy that I did this. I knew I wouldn't get those years back when the kids were at home and they weren't teenagers, and I just needed to do it. So
This is so great, Drew, because I think almost every one of us, I would think most parents, fathers, mothers would we all want the same thing, but we get sucked into the way society or our industry, in this case, dentistry, the way the outside looks at success. Yes. And nowhere in that definition that I've ever heard was sell everything, take a couple years off and travel the world. I've never read that anywhere. That would, again, seem to be kind of irresponsible. And how could you do that? And that makes no sense because, you've got to be compounding your assets and your equity. If you miss a couple of years, that's going to set you way back. And we miss the whole context. I'm not going to deviate into my story, but my change in my life was not because I was intentional like you. It was a God-given opportunity through adversity that set me up. But I got the same benefits that you got. And I love your story because what you're showing people is that you can do this. And you and your wife got together, you set some key goals, not have any, consumption or personal loan debt, have the house paid off, have X dollars, in a retirement account by your age. So you had that set aside. Your wife wanted some liquid cash. You made those goals. You worked together to figure out what is that, and then you're good. And you said we can do this. And as you said, the benefits of these 2 years that you spent with your family will just be memories and the bonding. And I can't imagine how the conversations, in your home and your kids' outlook at life. I'm sure it was positive before you went on the trip, just knowing you in a short period of time. But I'm sure that their outlook at life is so much different than most other people because we all tend to worry so much. We worry about everything, right? And all these things that we can't control. We worry about politics and economics and volatility in the stock market, all this stuff that we can't control. And this worry, and do I ever have enough? You talked about, the fact that you were able to pull this off for $140,000, 2 years, a family of 7, traveling the world with experiences that very few would ever have for $140,000, $70,000 a year. I talk a lot in Freedom Founders about, your freedom number, that freedom number. What's that number that you need to have that's passive cash flow that would essentially set you free? So if you didn't want to work, or you want to take 2 years off to travel the world, or you wanted to work part-time and have a week every week off with your family, whatever that means, what that freedom number looks like. And it's not that hard to get there if you don't have a freedom number that's sky high because you decide to live a life of entitlement and buy the bigger house and go into debt because debt's cheap today. Oh my gosh, debt's so cheap. You can have nice cars and nice homes and second homes and all this cool stuff that society says that's success. And you feel good, you thump your chest a little bit, or maybe inside you do, or on the outside you do, but on the inside, that's where I think, and I was there in my life, until I got my wake up call that, I wasn't really spending time with my family. I was going to miss those years. Right. And you guys haven't done that. And I'm so inspired by your story. And I'm really hopeful that this will at least be cause for our listeners to maybe go back and with their spouses say, hey, and maybe their kids, right? We ought to do another show with your kids. That'd be probably fun if you.
I'd love to. If you allow. It's awesome to hear you say that, actually, because in a weird way, I was almost like a little bit worried that I was kind of going to get like scolded or something. Like, why'd you go and spend all this money? You could have invested it here and stuff like that.
Oh, no.
So
See,
that's cool, you know?
it's just the, so yeah, so maybe we'll do that. But no, it's just the opposite because you see, I had to learn the same thing. I sold my practice at a relatively young age. I mean, I could have gone back. Picked it up, but I wanted that time. I didn't travel the world with my daughter. She was healing, but still I got to spend time with her. So my time with her was still the same as yours. I want to spend time with her, but I got over that worrying apart because there was something more important to me, and you did the same thing, and you'll never regret that. So I think the key word, some key words you said were, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to live your dreams now. I mean, you still got to be responsible, but you have been, you are responsible. And I like your idea of work 10, take 2 off. Retire 2, work 10, retire 2,
Yeah,
whatever that pulse is.
I do think you should be afraid of something, and that is you should be afraid of being 72 and having a bunch of kids that don't like you, and being in a situation where you didn't do it right. That's what I was afraid of. So I didn't mean, that's the fear that was kind of pushing me forward. Anyway, to your point, I just don't be afraid to pull the trigger on this stuff like that, like you said. But I was afraid that I was going to mess it up with kids and stuff like that. And I might still mess it up with kids. It's still early in the game.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the adventure. We have to give ourselves room to not be perfect. I mean, dental school or engineering school or anything that requires the detail of what we do, we almost have to be perfectionists or strive for perfection. And I think the carryover in the rest of our life can actually be harmful. It's like, got to get over that. Yes, when you're working in the mouth, on the body, technical work, yeah, we have to strive for being the absolute best we can be. But I think if we carry that over to the rest of our lives, then that can be, can be harmful. There's a famous, I say relatively famous. She's written some books, and maybe you've heard of her, an Australian palliative care nurse. Her name's Bronnie, Bronnie, Ware, Ware.
Yes.
If you Google the 5 regrets of the dying.
Yes.
Yes, right. Yeah. So I won't go through those, but listeners should Google the 5 regrets of the dying and read what the regrets were of people that were in their last days or weeks of life in hospice, where she talked to them, particularly she talked about the men and what they look back on. And it was never, I wish I would have had another, $500,000 in the stock market. I wish I would have had a second practice. I wish I would have, it was never those things. And so what you're doing is you're helping our listeners future pace and the opportunity for them today to make better decisions with intention, so that they don't live their life with regrets down the road.
Well, we try to be pretty deliberate. My wife and I, maybe we're over deliberate, I don't know, but I want to just relate one quick experience. I was at the airport with her. This is when I was just a bit younger. This is probably 5 years before we were going on this trip, and we were probably debating on whether or not to spend the money on this trip at the time. I don't remember what the conversation was, but I remember sitting in the airport and I was doing a bunch of calculations, David, with compound interest and how I could do this. And if I made this investment, what would happen? And I was getting so excited, man, because I'm like a lot of dentists. We have this sensation that it all could come crashing down any moment and you could lose everything. And then what? And then you're fearful of this financial hardship because you want to be a good provider, whatever. So I looked at her and I said, Annie, if we make this investment and this investment, we put this much in, if we really scrimp and save and we don't spend too much money on this and we invest it all, we can have $20 million when we're 65. And Annie didn't even look up from what she was doing. And she said, what are you going to do with $20 million when you're 65?
Exactly.
And I said, I don't know.
Drew, well, when you can travel the world at $70,000 a year, I don't think you need 20 million. I think right? You're probably okay. But you're right. There's so much fear about do I have enough? I see and talk to so many of our colleagues, hardworking, dedicated to the profession. I mean, dedicated to their families in the best way they know how, which is just to work hard and try to pile it up and save it up. And I talk to so many that are fearful of taking any real time off other than, you know, the typical, we'll take a couple vacations a year and go skiing or something. Great. Okay. Wow. But coming back to the grind again and just grinding it out and just trying to stack it up, never giving themselves the opportunity to take time off or even consider, again, not to use the word we both don't really look at, but, you know, semi-retirement or transition or what I talk about in the book that I published recently. You know, what's your next? Why can't you continue to evolve in life? Why do you have to stay in one kind of rut, one trench? You've already shown that in your life. You went from OMS residency, uh, obviously love that, but decided to, you know, iterate your actual focus on practice to, you know, high level cosmetic and restorative, right? I mean, you made a switch, which some people say, gosh, how could you do that? That's pretty costly to.
That was the same deal, man. I knew, I was like, oh, oral surgery, that's pretty cool. In dental school, I thought that's what I want to do. That sounds really important. You know what I mean? Sounds like I'm going to be an important person,
Right.
or whatever, you know. But one day, man, I got a call in the middle of the night. I was the doctor on call. I went into the hospital. There's a guy with a pipe stuck through his face, you know, had fallen in construction scaffolding. And I'm scrubbed in, and the nurses are looking at me and they're like, what do you want to do, Dr. Ballard? I'm like, I want to go home. I'm so grateful for those people that can do those kind of high level things. I am so grateful for them. But I discovered in myself that I wasn't one of those people. And I wanted to just do something. I just wanted to do something different. And I respect the heck out of those people, man. The oral surgeons, the neurosurgeons, the people that deliver babies, all that kind of stuff. Amazing. You know what I mean? But it just wasn't for me. And I'm a much happier doing what I'm doing. But like a lot of people said, like, how could you walk away from that residency? How could you walk away from that extra money or something like that? It just, I don't know. I just wanted to be successful in a different way.
You talk about the fact that you believe that not all years are created equally. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So you sort of think of, maybe you're going to live till you're 90 or something like that. You know, you sort of think of that as an amateurization where I've got allotted 365 days every year until I'm 90. Wow, that's a lot of days. And when you're young, you just think that there's endless number of suns and sunsets. But I started looking at this and I said, gosh, you know what? I'm 35 years old or 37 years old, whatever I was, you know, and I'm like, wow, my parents are in their 70s. How many more years do I have with mom and dad? My kids, when they turn 15, they're not going to want to hang out with me. You know what I mean? They're going to start to change. So these years that you have when your parents are alive, when your kids are with you, they're not all equal. Those are weighted years. I'm not saying they're better years or anything like that, but they're different for sure. And there's things that can happen during those years that you can only do during those years. And unfortunately, they happen to us when we're in the middle of our probably most intense years as dentists, trying to keep a practice going and doing all these things. So I told, no, this is my mentality. I said, well, what if I have to work longer when I'm 65? I won't have to, by the way. But what if I have to? Is that okay with me? What if I took time off right now and I just had to hang on a little bit longer later on? That would be fine with me. And I looked at that risk and that trade-off, and I said, that's going to take the fear out of me, because I know that whatever happens now, if I take some time to do this right now, there'll be time to do things later, you know, that are grandpa's got to go to work. Whatever. Whatever. So, but I knew it'd be worth it. Those years are important. We have our kids with us, and I'm still in the middle of it, and I'm trying to make the most of it now. And I'm really hoping that when I sit down and I look back, and I'm gonna enjoy my work when I'm older, if I'm still working, and just be able to look back and say, gosh, you know, I did that right.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So Drew, how do you think this is going to affect these experiences, the 2 years you spent with your family? How will this affect your family dynamics, relationships in the future?
I think it's interesting right now. It's not something we talk about every day. You know, like, hey, remember when we did this? But I know it's in there. I know it's going to emerge as those kids move into young adulthood. I know it's going to emerge, these experiences they've had. I'm confident that the relationships have enough. You know, if you think of a relationship as a bank account, we've made enough deposits in that account that that relationship is going to survive teenagerhood. I think that all those things are true. So yeah, I think as the kids emerge into adulthood, I think that they're going to have a wealth of knowledge, and I think they'll have some legend stories. When you're sitting around the table, I imagine ourselves sitting around the table in Christmases to come or whatever, and saying, "Gosh, remember when we did this?" Or "Mom and Dad, you were crazy. I can't believe you did that to us." And I imagine those things will emerge, and so I think they become those things become the culture of your family, and the folklore, even the folklore behind the people. So that's what I'm hoping to get from it, and I'm hoping we're going to do something like this again. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you set a precedent for sure, and I think what you and your wife set out to do and decided together is amazing, and I just hope this will fuel the same discussions for our listeners to do something that for them is out of the ordinary. Take some initial steps. You don't have to do exactly what you guys did, but do something that pushes your thinking or your limiting beliefs, and push those aside and do something to focus on the years that, as you said, are not always equal. What are those years where you really want to have some impact, where you have the opportunity to do that? Don't wait for some mystical time in the future when everything's going to be just right. You have enough money and all that stuff, because those days never come.
Never happen.
They never happen. They never happen.
Yeah.
Well, Drew Ballard, I appreciate you so much, coming on today and sharing. I'm serious about asking you, to see if we could follow up sometime and bring the whole family on board. I think that would be kind of cool.
That would be kind of fun. I'll do that if you want. That'd be fun.
All right, well, talk to your wife and your kids and see if they'd be willing to do that sometime. We could make that work, and we'll talk about that. How's
Well,
that?
it's great to meet you. You've been a hero of mine, so it's wonderful to be able to talk with you this way.
Well, you're a hero to not only your family, but to a lot of people just coming on here today, and obviously the service to the country and the people you served, and continue to serve, Drew. So I appreciate you, admire you. Thank you very much.
Been an honor, man. Thank you.